She had no way. Kelly looked around the kitchen for a weapon. She had no way of knowing which drawer held the knives. On the counter was a box of angel hair pasta. On the stove was a pot of boiling water, and next to it, a smaller pot with a red sauce that was cooking. Sam walked into the kitchen and put his arms around Kelly. She pretended not to pay any attention. She looked at the sauce on the stove. Looks wonderful. He was stroking her body. It is. What do you like to do in bed, baby? Kelly's mind was racing. She said softly, everything. I used to do something kinky to Mark that drove him crazy. Sam's face lit up. What was that? I would take a warm, wet washcloth and she picked up a soft cloth on the sink. I'll show you. Drop your pants. Sam Meadows grinned. Yeah. He loosened his trousers and dropped them to the floor. He was wearing boxer shorts. Now your shorts. He dropped his shorts, and his organ was engorged. Kelly said admiringly, my. She picked up the soft cloth with her left hand and moved toward him. With her right hand, she picked up the pot of boiling water and hurled the contents onto his genitals. Kelly could still hear his screams as she took the key out of the armoire, unlocked the door, and fled. Chapter 38. Rockendorf's is one of the outstanding restaurants in Germany, its Art Nouveau decor long serving as a symbol of Berlin's prosperity. When Diane walked in, she was greeted by the maitre d'. May I help you? I have a reservation. Stevens. Miss Frunk is going to meet me here. This way, please. The maitre d' seated her at a corner table. Diane looked around carefully. There were about 40 customers in the restaurant, most of them businessmen. Across from Diane's table, an attractive well-dressed man was dining alone. Diane sat there, thinking about her conversation with Heidi Frank. How much would she know? Conversation with the waiter handed Diane a menu. Bid. Thank you. Diane glanced at the menu. Leberts, Haxen, Labskaus. She had no idea what any of the dishes were. Heidi Frank could explain them. Diane glanced at her watch. Heidi was 20 minutes late. The waiter came to the table. Would you like to order now, Fräulein? No. I'll wait for my guest. Thank you. The minutes were ticking by. Diane was beginning to wonder whether something had gone wrong. 15 minutes later, the waiter came back to the table. May I bring you anything? No, thanks. My guest should be here any minute. At 9 o'clock, Heidi Frank still had not appeared. With a sinking feeling, Diane realized that she was not coming. As Diane glanced up, she saw two men sitting down at a table near the entrance. They were ill-dressed and mean-looking, and the word that came to Diane's mind was thugs. She watched as the waiter went to their table, and they rudely waved him away. They were not interested in food. They turned back to stare at Diane, and with a feeling of dismay, she realized she had walked into a trap. Heidi Frank had set her up. Diane could feel the blood rush to her head. She looked around for a means of escape. There was none. She could keep sitting there, but eventually she was going to have to leave, and they would grab her. She thought about using her cell phone, but there was no one who could help her. Diane thought desperately, I've got to get out of here, but how? As she looked around the room, her gaze fell on the attractive man sitting alone at the table across from hers. He was sipping his coffee. Diane smiled at him and said, "Good evening." He looked up, surprised, and said pleasantly, "Good evening." Diane gave him a warm, inviting smile, pleased that he spoke English. "I see we're both alone." "Would you like to join me?" He hesitated a moment and smiled. "Certainly." He rose and walked over to Diane's table. "It's no fun eating alone, is it?" Diane said lightly. "You're quite right. It's not." She held out a hand. "I'm Diane Stevens. Greg Holiday." Harris had been stunned by her terrifying experience with Sam Meadows. After her escape, she had spent the night walking the streets of Montmartre, constantly looking behind her, in fear that she was being followed. But I can't leave Paris without finding out what's going on, Kelly thought. At dawn, she stopped at a small cafe and had a cup of coffee. The answer to her problem came to her unexpectedly: Mark's secretary. She had adored Mark. Kelly was sure she would do anything to be helpful. At 9 o'clock, Kelly made the call from a telephone kiosk. She dialed the familiar number, and a female operator with a heavy French accent said, "Kingsley International Group. I'd like to talk to Yvonne Rennes." "Un moment, s'il vous plaît." A moment later, Kelly heard Yvonne's voice. "Yvonne Rennes. May I help you?" "Yvonne, this is Kelly Harris." There was a startled exclamation. "Oh." Mrs. Harris. In Tanner Kingsley's office a blue light flashed. Tanner picked up the telephone. It was 3 a.m. in New York, but he had resolved not to leave his office until the troublesome problem was disposed of. Now, as Tanner listened on the phone, he heard the conversation that was taking place in Paris. "I'm so sorry about what happened to Mr. Harris. It was so awful." "Thank you, Yvonne. I need to talk to you. Can we meet somewhere? Are you free for lunch?" "Yes. Someplace public. Do you know l'École de Paris? It's in La Tour Montparnasse." "Yes." In his office, Tanner Kingsley made a mental note. "12 o'clock. That's fine. I'll see you there." Tanner Kingsley's lips puckered into a thin smile. "Enjoy your last lunch." He unlocked the drawer, opened it, and picked up the gold telephone. When a voice at the other end answered, Tanner said, "Good news. It's over. We have them both." He listened a moment, then nodded. "I know. It took a little longer than we expected, but we're ready to go forward now. I feel the same way. Goodbye." ******* La Tour Montparnasse is a 685-foot tower, built of steel and glass. The building was abuzz with activity. The offices in the building were fully occupied. The bar and restaurant were located on the 56th floor. Kelly was the first to arrive. Yvonne came in 15 minutes later, apologizing profusely. Kelly had only met her a few times, but she remembered her well. Yvonne was a tiny, sweet-faced lady. Mark had often told Kelly how efficient Yvonne was. "Thank you for coming," Kelly said. "I would do anything I could to Mr. Harris was such a wonderful man. Everyone at the office adored him." None of us could believe what happened. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, Ivan. You were with my husband 5 years. Yes. So you got to know him pretty well. Yes. Did you notice anything in the last few months that seemed strange? I mean, any change in the way he acted or what he said? Ivan avoided her eyes. I'm not sure, I mean? Kelly said earnestly, whatever you say now can't hurt him. And it might help me understand what happened. Kelly steeled herself to ask the next question. Did he ever talk about Olga? Ivan looked at her, puzzled. Olga? No. You don't know who she was. I have no idea. Kelly felt a sense of relief. She leaned forward. Ivan, is there something you're not telling me? Well? The waiter came up to their table. Bonjour, mesdames. Bienvenue au ciel de Paris. Je m'appelle Jacques Brian. Notre chef de cuisine prépare quelques spécialités pour le déjeuner d'aujourd'hui. Avez-vous fait votre choix? Oui, monsieur. Nous avons choisi le Chateaubriand pour deux. When the waiter left, Kelly looked at Eva. "5 years. Yes. So you got to know him pretty well." Yes. Did you notice anything in the last few months that seemed strange? I mean, any change in the way he acted or what he said? Ivan avoided her eyes. I'm not sure, I mean? Kelly said earnestly, whatever you say now can't hurt him. And it might help me understand what happened. Kelly steeled herself to ask the next question. Did he ever talk about Olga? Ivan looked at her, puzzled. Olga? No. You don't know who she was. I have no idea. Kelly felt a sense of relief. She leaned forward. Ivan, is there something you're not telling me? Well? The waiter came up to their table. Bonjour, mesdames. Bienvenue au ciel de Paris. Je m'appelle Jacques Brian. Notre chef de cuisine prépare quelques spécialités pour le déjeuner d'aujourd'hui. Avez-vous fait votre choix? Oui, monsieur. Nous avons choisi le Chateaubriand pour deux. When the waiter left, Kelly looked at Ivan. You were saying. Well, in the last few days before he died, Mr. Harris seemed very nervous. He asked me to get him a plane ticket to Washington, D.C. I know about that. I thought it was just a routine business trip. No. I think it was something very unusual, something urgent. Do you have any idea what it was about? No. Everything suddenly became very secret. That's all I know. Kelly quizzed Yvonne for the next hour, but there was nothing Yvonne could add. When they had finished their lunch, Kelly said, I would like you to keep this meeting confidential, Yvonne. You don't have to worry about that, Mrs. Harris. I won't tell a soul. Yvonne stood up. I have to get back to work. Her lips trembled. But it won't be the same. Thank you, Yvonne. Who was Mark going to see in Washington? And there had been the strange phone calls from Germany and Denver and New York. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Kelly took the elevator down to the lobby. I'll give Diane a call and see what she's found out. Maybe as Kelly reached the front entrance of the building, she saw them. There were two large men, one on each side of the door. They looked at her, then grinned at each other. As far as Kelly knew, there was no other nearby exit. Could Yvonne have betrayed me? The men started moving toward Kelly, roughly pushing past the people coming in and out of the building. Kelly looked around frantically and pressed against the wall. Her arm was bumping something hard. She looked at it, and as the two men moved closer, Kelly picked up the little hammer attached to the fire alarm unit on the wall, broke the glass, and the fire alarm clanged throughout the building. Kelly yelled, "Fire! Fire!" There was instant panic. People came running out of offices. Shops and restaurants, headed for the exit door. Within seconds, the hall was jammed, with everyone fighting to get out. The two men were trying to find Kelly in the crowd. When they finally got to where they had last seen her, Kelly had disappeared. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Rockendorf's restaurant was getting crowded. I was waiting for a friend, Diane explained to Greg Holliday, the attractive man she had invited to her table. It looks like she wasn't able to make it. Too bad. Are you in Berlin on a visit? Yes. It is a beautiful city. I am a happily married man, or I would offer to be your escort. But there are some excellent tours in Berlin that I can recommend. That would be nice, Diane said absently. She glanced toward the entrance. The two men were walking out the door. They would be waiting for her outside. It was time to make her move. As a matter of fact, Diane said, I'm here with a group. She looked at her watch. They're waiting for me now. If you wouldn't mind walking me out to a taxi, not at all. A few moments later, they were heading out the exit. Diane felt a deep sense of relief. The two men might attack her alone, but she did not think they would attack her with a man at her side. It would attract too much attention. When Diane and Greg Holiday stepped outside, the two men were nowhere in sight. A taxi was in front of the restaurant, a Mercedes parked behind it. Diane said, "It was nice meeting you, Mr. Holiday." I hope Holiday smiled and took her arm, gripping it so tightly that Diane felt an agonizing pain. She looked at him, startled. "What? Why don't we take the car?" he said softly. He was pulling Diane toward the Mercedes. His grip tightened. "No, I don't want to." As they reached the car, Diane saw the men from the restaurant sitting inside, on the front seat. Horrified, Diane suddenly understood how she had been trapped, and she was filled with an overwhelming terror. "Please," she said. "Don't." She felt herself being shoved into the car. Greg Holiday moved in beside Diane and closed the door. Schnell. As the car pulled into the heavy traffic, Diane found herself becoming hysterical. "Please." Greg Holiday turned to her and smiled reassuringly. "You can relax. I am not going to hurt you. I promise you that by tomorrow, you will be on your way home." He reached into a cloth pocket attached to the back of the driver's seat and took out a hypodermic needle. "I'm going to give you a shot. It's harmless. It will put you to sleep for an hour or two." He reached for Diane's wrist. "Skies!" the driver yelled. A pedestrian had suddenly darted in front of the Mercedes, and the driver jammed on the brakes to avoid hitting him. Caught unaware, Holiday's head slammed against the metal framework of the driver's headrest. He tried to sit up, groggy. He yelled at the driver, "What?" Instinctively, Diane grabbed Holiday's hand that was holding the hypodermic needle, twisted his wrist, and plunged the needle into his flesh. Holiday turned to her in shock. "No." It was a scream. With growing horror, Diane watched Holiday's body go into spasms and then stiffen and collapse. He was dead within seconds. The two men in the front seat turned to see what was happening. Diane was out the door and seconds later in a taxi, headed in the opposite direction. Chapter 39. The sound of her cell phone startled her. She picked it up cautiously. "Hello." "Hi, Kelly." "Diane. Where are you?" "In Munich." "Where are you?" on a train to London. How did your meeting with Sam Meadows go? Kelly could still hear his screams. I'll tell you about it when we meet. Did you get any information? Not much. We have to decide what to do next. We're running out of options. Gary Reynolds's plane crashed near Denver. I think we have to go there. Maybe it's our last chance. All right. The obituary said that Reynolds has a sister living in Denver. She might know something. Why don't we meet in Denver at the Brown Palace Hotel? I'm flying out of Schonfeld Airport, in Berlin, in 3 hours. I'll get a plane out of Heathrow. Good. The room will be booked under the name of Harriet Beecher Stowe. Kelly, yes. Just, you know. I know. You, too. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Tanner was alone in his office, talking on the gold phone, and they managed to escape. Sam Meadows is not a happy man, and Greg Holiday is dead. He was silent for a moment, thinking. Logically, the only place left for them is Denver. In fact, that's probably their last option. It looks as though I'm going to have to handle this personally. They've won my respect, so it's only fitting that I take care of them properly. He listened, then laughed. Of course. Goodbye. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Andrew was seated in his office, his mind floating, creating hazy visions. He was lying in a hospital bed and Tanner was saying, "You surprised me, Andrew. You were supposed to die. Now the doctors tell me you can get out of here in a few days. I'm giving you an office at KIG. I want you to see how I'm saving your ass. You just wouldn't learn, would you, you imbecile? Well, I'm turning your penny ante operation into a gold mine, and you can sit there and watch how I do it. By the way, the first thing I did was to cancel all the bullshit do-good projects you started, Andrew, Andrew, Andrew." The voice was getting louder. "Andrew. Are you deaf?" Tanner was calling him. Andrew pulled himself to his feet and walked into his brother's office. Tanner looked up. "I hope I'm not interfering with your work," Tanner said sarcastically. "No, I was just..." Tanner studied his brother a moment. "You're really not good for anything, are you, Andrew? You don't reap, neither do you, so it's good for me to have someone to talk to, but I don't know how much longer I want to keep you around." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Kelly arrived in Denver ahead of Diane, and she registered at the venerable Brown Palace Hotel. "A friend of mine will be arriving this afternoon. Would you like 2 rooms?" "No, a double." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. When Diane's plane landed at Denver International Airport, She took a taxi to the hotel. She walked up to the front desk and spoke to the clerk. "Oh, yes. Mrs. Stowe is expecting you. She's in room 638. It was a relief to hear." Kelly was waiting. The two of them exchanged a warm hug. "I've missed you. I've missed you. How was your trip?" Kelly asked. "Uneventful. Thank God." Diane looked at her and said, "What happened to you in Paris?" Kelly took a deep breath. "Tanner Kingsley." "What happened in Berlin?" Diane said tonelessly, "Tanner Kingsley." Kelly walked over to a table, picked up a telephone directory, and brought it back to Diane. "Gary's sister, Lois Reynolds, is listed in the telephone book. She lives on Marion Street." "Good." Diane looked at her watch. "It's too late to do anything tonight. We'll go there first thing in the morning. Asterisk asterisk asterisk." They had dinner in the room and talked until midnight, then got ready for bed. Diane said, "Good night," and reached for the light switch. The bedroom was plunged into darkness. Kelly screamed, "No! Turn on the lights." Diane quickly turned them back on. "I'm so sorry, Kelly. I forgot. I used to be afraid of the dark, until Mark. And after he was killed?" Kelly began hyperventilating, fighting to control her panic. She took a deep breath. "I wish I could get over this." "Don't worry about it. When you're feeling very secure, you will